Buenas and half a day to our listeners on Guam and in the CNMI. It's now time for Total Health right here on Joy FM Radio, where your questions get answered by health professionals. If you have any health-related questions, we would love to hear from you. Call your questions and comments in at 472-1111 or text or WhatsApp 686-9999. If you're in the CNMI, please call 323-1113. Welcome everybody to Total Health.
Well, hello everyone. We are very excited that we are going to have like our part 2 talk today about the microbiome. I don't know, but lately I have been really excited about this topic. And actually, if I go in a place and they ask me to do just one topic about health, I'm going to talk about that. And we're so privileged that Dr. Geslani, Bevan Geslani, is back with us. For those of you that know him, he's already a very well-known person. For those of you that don't know him, he has been the director of the SDA clinic for more than 15 years. And Dr. Geslani has a reason to keep on visiting us over and over again. Some wonderful grandchildren, his children as well. And so we are excited that he's back. When I realized that he is on the island, I said, Dr. Geslani, let's do a part 2 on that topic. Welcome, Dr. Geslani.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be back again. Guam is home, I believe, for my 2 kids. My oldest son, Van, grew up here, and my girl, Allison, grew up here too. And now my son is actually together with his family. Is coming in tonight, and we'll be here for about a week. And his family, this would be the first time for his family to be actually in Guam.
That's fantastic.
So that's good. And then my daughter and my son-in-law, Dale and Allison, has been here for over 2 years now. And so so Guam has been part of our family, and I'm glad to be back.
You know, some of us are not born in Guam, but we feel really Chamorro, right?
That's right.
This is how I feel. Sometimes I say I'm more Chamorro than some Chamorros because I absolutely love where we are. And we are very passionate of what we are doing. And from what I understood, all your family and your children, grandchildren, grandchildren not yet, but children are also in the medical field.
That's right. My son is in internal medicine. He does hospital work. He's a hospitalist in Roseville, up in Northern California, right? And
we have Allison.
Allison is here. She's a nurse practitioner, and then Dale, her husband, is a physical therapist, and my daughter-in-law, Van's wife, is a nurse too. So we're basically in the medical field.
And, you know, from all the topics we can talk about it, I'm very fascinated that you're excited to talk about the microbiome. So a few months ago, we talked about it, and we kind of brought the concept, how important it is to take care of the microorganisms that live in us. We're not anymore, isolated beings. When God said, I'll create you in our image, we are many. We are a multitude because we as organisms, as human organisms, we have only between 20 and 30,000 types of genes, while those little microbes that live in our guts, they have close to 100,000
That's right.
genes. And we have close to 100 different ones. One individual can have between 125 and more of those, but they live inside of us. And if we do take care of them, they will do take care of us. And if we decide to be in a conflict with them and do whatever pleases us, we might actually go against us by not taking care of them, right?
That's right. What's interesting, and I probably pointed this out the last time, was that when God created us, He created us from dust, from the earth, And if you think about it, what lives in dust and the earth is a lot of the micro organisms, and so in a sense we are created in dust in His image, and God created us with the idea that all of these are what we call the microbiomes, the organisms, the different kinds of organisms that live in our bodies actually live in harmonious, uh, state. They help each other out, and they also try to protect each other. So the microbiome is, in a sense, a special guard. It looks out for everything that's going on in our body through different hormones, the different proteins, and we'll talk about more about how the microbiome relates to our immunity, and immunity is an important part of us, especially we heard about what's going on with COVID and with going on with all kinds of infections that's in our what's going on around right now. And so how does the microbiome interact with our immunity? How does it relate to our immunity? And we'll be talking more about that later.
Right. In the 17th century, when the first scientist that discovered the microscopes was able to identify the bacteria, and when, later on we had the era of the antibiotics, we always assumed that the bacteria is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bacteria is where the diseases come, and that's why some of us become really paranoid when it comes about germs and bacteria. But now we're coming with more science that actually shows that not all bacteria is bad, and actually most of the bacteria actually can be good.
That's
Even
right.
right?
That's right.
Even those bacteria that we are like, oh, that's a very bad bacteria. At some point, it was serving some purpose, but we don't live in an ideal world, and our environment is not always ideal. So sometimes those that we want to be helped the most, we want to be helped from them and we want to help them, actually turns against us. And we'll see why is that. So, Dr. Geslani, not all bacteria is bad, right?
Not all bacteria is bad. That's right. And in some ways, there has to be a balance. Some of this bad bacteria comes about because the balance between what is bad and what is good kind of shifts, and that has to do a lot with what we're going to find out later on. How could we make our microbiome strong? And in that regard, how could we then make our immunity stronger by improving our microbiome? And the microbiome, as you know, starts when one is coming out from a mother's womb, right? And so that's where we all initially get all of this good bacteria that we have. And what they're saying, and we probably mentioned it last time, was that if there is a difference between a baby being born the natural way and a baby being born cesarean section, right? And they find that those that have been born the natural way has better, stronger microbiomes, bacteria in the babies. They also found out that if one gets to breastfeed at least 6 months, that their initial microbiome that starts in the baby has the beneficial germs or the bacteria that the body needs to be able to, prevent, external infections from going on in the baby. So breastfeeding is an important part too. And also just being exposed to other things, increases, what we have, the diversity in our microbiome.
Right. So from very young, we get inoculated with those
That's right.
bacteria, and we need them because when a child is born vaginally, the child has the privilege to get the lactobacillus, which we absolutely need, later on in life. And then with the breastfeed as well, the guts of the babies get filled in with those microbiomes that can serve. It can go through millions of generations of them. During our lifespan,
Yeah.
they live there, but they multiply and they live there. It's like millions of generations. This is so beautiful. If we can see it really with the under microscope, it looks so colorful. God really takes care of our insides in a very special way. He has put so much thought in our immune system.
That's right. And it all starts, like you mentioned, from the baby. And so, how do the babies develop their good microbiome? It also comes with diet, what the baby eats. And so, if the parents are eating the right kinds of food, and that also tend to translate to the kids, as they grow up, developing, the right kinds of microbiome. So, there's so much talking about, you said, what's going on in there's so much things going on in regards to how the microbiome affects not only the immunity, it affects how our mental health, it tries to protect us from cancer. It talks, how a microbiome interrelates with diabetes, and different chronic diseases that we have. And research is going on right now, and they're finding that there's some things like enzymes, like you're probably going to mention, certain peptides and hormones that the microbiome produces that help us prevent either illnesses or, if we don't take care of it, make us prone to get diseases.
Right. We're making a lot of fuss lately about this topic, and we'll see why just right after the break. Hang in there tuned.
Are there more stresses and temptations than ever before, or does it just seem that way? Well, Joy FM is here to help you deal with them all. We help you set your mind and heart on heavenly things. We're a trustworthy source of encouragement and direction that's straight from the Bible. When you support Joy FM, you're making a wise choice for funding listener-supported radio and helping others along the way. To help, go to joy92.net.
Si Joe Mossy, and thanks for listening to Total Health on Joy FM. We want to hear from you. Call in with your health-related questions at 472-1111. In Guam or in the CNMI, the number to call is 323-1113. Text or WhatsApp us at 686-9999. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back to the show, and we were talking about microbiome. You can tell from my voice that I'm very excited about the topic. And we have Dr. Geslani here doing part 2 because he's as well very fascinated with the topic. So we have made lately a lot of fuss about it. Why? Because we see when we interrupt the microbiome, how much we struggle. And there is no person that has a chronic condition that does not have problems with their guts, with their microbiome, inside part, gut flora. And lately we are discovering that even mental health is so related. That's why it's so strong, the brain-gut connection. If your gut, you have problems there, microbiomes are not good, they are not giving you enough of serotonin, which is vital for your good mood, then you might feel depressed, not knowing why. There is so much research showing that if you eat junk food, some study says for 6 years, if you eat junk food for 6 years, you're developing depression. Why? It is food. What does it have to do with my mind? No, it is true. There are a few components to it. There is one psychological component that when you eat junk food, you're like looking forward to something that you like. And when you don't like it, then you go into a situation that you're craving for it. You're like, why I'm not having it? And so you have this mood fluctuation. But another reason for that is that your microbiome is really strained. When the microbiome takes toxins or takes foods that are not food, it puts so much extra effort there that could have been used for other vital processes in your body feels constantly tired. And of course, when you're constantly tired, under stress, you do feel that in your mood. You can feel depressed, you can feel anxious. So is it only the brain connection or what else?
Yeah. So going back to the brain connection that you're mentioning, when we talk about, you've heard about all the antidepressants, the SSRIs, the serotonin, reuptake inhibitors. So the word serotonin is a hormone that the brain uses in order for them to be able to regulate one's emotions. And so we give things like Zoloft or Paxil, and that help people get through their anxiety and their depression. What we are finding is that a lot of the serotonin is actually produced in the gut, and so if you look at the relationship between what your body needs in regards to serotonin, there's this brain gut connection. Then if you make sure that your microbiome, which produces the serotonin, is producing enough of it, then you don't probably need to have the antidepressants that physicians and providers so easily prescribe, for someone who feels down. And how does one? And so the question comes in then, how do we make sure that our microbiome is healthy? How do we make sure that we are taking care of our microbiome? And that's where the researchers coming through. And a major part of it we find is that, we probably heard the word New Start, right?
Right.
Nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight,
sunshine.
yeah, sunlight, sunshine, temperance, air, rest,
And
and
trust
trust
in the
in the
Lord.
Lord. And I was doing some research and I came across, it's from a Harvard study, and what they actually see is that exactly what the things that we're talking about are the things that actually they say actually affects the microbiome. So a big part of it is the diet. A high fiber diet affects the type and amount of microbiota in the intestines. And what is high fiber?
What is high fiber? Right. What doesn't have high fiber? So what I know is that fiber is only in plants, fresh plants, right? Fresh food, living food.
That's right. That's right. And so what they find is that if one is into plant-based diet, which is the first letter in New Start, which is nutrition, then that actually helps the microbiome, be healthier. And they also actually talk about, also aside from that, and we could talk more about the diet too, which comes with what they call the probiotic foods and the prebiotic foods, is that they're also anything that's related has to do with our rest and exercise, and all those things have effect in terms of our microbiome.
Right. The microbiome likes everything that it is helpful for our health.
Mm-hmm.
They're living in this dark environment in our big, small and big intestines. They're living there. They're producing their substrates. They're producing their cofactors, coenzymes, enzymes, and they're doing so much work. And on top of that, we don't treat them always with respect. They need butyrate, this is their favorite food that comes from fiber. And as we said, fiber comes from plants. Animals don't have fiber. don't have fiber, and we will say, but what about protein? Okay, yes, the microbiome does need protein, does not need too much of the protein, because when we take too much of the protein, we actually change the acidity in our intestines, and then when that changes, some of them cannot even work. The microbiome cannot work, not all of them can work in a very acidic environment. And so they start struggling, and they kind of consider it as toxins, and they try to eliminate as much as possible. And the more energy they put right there, the more the colon just gets narrower, because they're working very hard to eliminate this food. It gets stiffer, and people can develop chronic conditions like inflammatory bowel disease. They can develop Crohn's disease. They can develop ulcerative colitis, and conditions that are really difficult to manage. And it all comes because most of the times it can be a genetic component, but most of the times it comes because we respectfully do not take care of our microbiome. Right?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about when it comes to diseases that not everything could be directly caused by what we call lifestyle. But when they look at on a larger scale, what we find that any of these chronic diseases has an initial cause would be, what we do with our lifestyle. And lifestyle, actually, a big part, and we talk about the New Start, has a big part in regards to the microbiome. And so if the microbiome is a healthy, we're repeating ourselves here, if a microbiome is healthy, there's less likelihood that one would develop, many of these chronic inflammatory diseases. And we talk about, we think about diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease as, unrelated to any kind of inflammation. But what we are finding right now actually is that any of the chronic diseases, an underlying problem is an inflammatory condition that's
Correct.
going on.
Yes, yes. And when we have an elevated inflammatory factors, it's more difficult for the microbiome to work. Even diseases like psoriasis, it's very prevalent. And we find psoriasis very prevalent in Guam. We find also that people with psoriasis do struggle with their microbiome. If your microbiome is healthier, there is less likely of a chance, to develop those exacerbation of the patches and so on. So if you do struggle with inflammatory conditions, this is where we can start and work on. For example, the conditions that I just mentioned, the intestinal problems, lately scientists have been trying to treat people with probiotics only. Those medications that are immunosuppressants like or mesalamine, they're as effective as a good probiotic diet or a good prebiotic diet for our patients. And many patients are actually able to reverse those difficult to control diseases. Nobody likes to be bloated. Nobody likes to have, smelly flatulence, have those cramps, abdominal cramps, feeling uncomfortable, having to excuse themselves from places just because they feel constantly bloated. But if we do eat properly, we can take care of most of those problems. If we do have fiber can trap all the excess products of our intestinal work, the microbiome work, and we should not experience that as often. Everybody has moments. We all eat from time to time a wrong thing, and we realize that our guts actually don't like it. They actually show us right away, like, hey, this doesn't suit very well with me, which means it doesn't suit very well with my gut flora. And then we can adjust. Then we can, of course, do and use foods that are preferable for our gut flora.
That's right. And I think, when we now the microbiome, we talk about a lot of gut, and that's where a big majority. But as we could see, our microbiome also is in areas like our lung. It's areas on our skin. It's our mouth or our nose, right? And so those are things that our body helps to protect itself. And big research now is going on too in regards to lung microbiome and different factors that are going on in the lung. What is the microbiome that's in the lung itself, and what they're finding is that things like asthma, things like reactive airway disease, those things could be due, and this is research, to some kind of an imbalance between the good microbiome that we have and things that are outside, the antigens, the things that create a lot of this reactive airways that we have. So so the microbiome is really a lot that's going on, and it comes down again to what do we do about them, and it comes down to, are we making them healthy? And so if it's the lung, smoking doesn't make your microbiome, healthy by itself. So that
alcohol doesn't make it healthy.
Alcohol doesn't make it healthy. You're right. Yeah.
It kills some of them.
Yeah.
Antibiotics do not make them healthy too. And this is where we're shifting lately. And I am very, very cautious when I have to prescribe antibiotics. And we will talk a little bit more about that because it does lead to consequences for our patients. 1/3 of your gut get killed because of an antibiotic intake. But a little bit more about it just right after the break.
One brick on top of another isn't that strong, but when you add the mortar between them, you get a building that stands. Each song we play is a brick. Each time we open the microphone, that's a brick. They're all building blocks that touch people with the message of Christ. However, you are the mortar. Your financial support cements the bricks together. So send off your support today and help us stand strong. From Joy FM.
One person at a time through radio waves.
Life change.
When someone's turning the dial and they don't know about Jesus, they could hear it and they can feed off it and just really change our life around.
God speaks through Christian radio.
One life at a time.
In communities that really need a light, that really need a message of hope.
They've really come to life for me and they minister to me.
We're there when you need us.
All of a sudden, they're hit with maybe what they've been needing to hear for years in their life.
We're Joy FM.
It's just what I need.
Welcome back. You're listening to Total Health on Joy FM. Call in with your health-related questions to 472-1111 in Guam. If you live in the CNMI, we want to hear from you too. Call 323-1113 or text or WhatsApp us at 686-9999. And now, here's more Total Health.
Yes, before the break, we were talking about the antibiotic use. And I don't know, Dr. Geslani, if you have experienced that, but many times when I have at the drive-thru my patients coming, they just think that you're not a good provider unless you give an antibiotic, or because they're like, why then we come to the clinic when you're not going to give us an antibiotic? We could have just stayed at home and there is no point of us seeing you. So since we have this belief that all bacteria are wrong, all the viruses are bad, and then we learn that antibiotic is good for us. Now, I don't know, maybe it will take generations until we realize that, no, actually, antibiotics are not as good for us. Maybe they are a fast solution. Okay, let's get an antibiotic, and maybe we somehow will feel a little bit better. But in a long term, in a long run, we are finding out more and more consequences. It can kill 1/3 of your intestinal flora. This is 1/3 of your immunity. Just when they are trying so hard to get rid of the virus and the bacteria, we decide that it's better to deal without their health. and that we can actually use an antibiotic. It can take up to 6 months for this flora to really regain itself and come back to in place. I remember the last time I took antibiotic, I said never ever, unless I really, 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 really need it, because it took me a long time to feel better and recover from it.
One of the things that we give antibiotics would be like urinary tract infections. But what they're actually finding right now is that to prevent UTIs, you have to have a good probiotic, which actually, like we mentioned, the microbiome is not just in the gut, it is kind of all over. And so what they're finding actually is that probiotics kind of counteracts, the bad effects of the antibiotics. And that's one of the things that in this article that I was reading that they were saying is that anytime one is given an antibiotic, actually, having a probiotic, tends to help. But the best thing is, if you could avoid an antibiotic, that would even be better. Now, there's rules in terms of when antibiotics are necessary. But by and large, if it's a virus and things like that, there's really no point in giving an antibiotic.
Right. When they're virus, you're right. And we have noticed that even lately, even acute bronchitis, if you have an acute bronchitis, it will help you between 57 and 75%. It won't help you completely. You still have to work on improving your microbiome to fight the condition. We can't rely anymore on medication solely. We have to work towards our health. And as you mentioned, COVID was like a very vivid proof that you have to be healthy. If you don't take care of yourself, if your sugars are not controlled, blood pressure is not controlled, one virus will come, another virus will come. It will be just harder and harder for you to bounce back from it if you can. If you may. So nowadays we're talking more and more how we can live healthy, not only disease-free. We emphasize on diseases, we study so much about diseases, but we study so little about health, right?
Yeah, and which is the sad part. Our medicine here, Western medicine, tends to be more in terms of curing, rather than preventing. But they say, a pound of prevention is better. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure.
Right. I was working in a hospital that had this idea that when somebody is sick, they just come to a pit stop. And we as doctors, nurses, we just help that person change the broken parts, repair the car so the car will continue forward. But how much you continue forward when we just keep on giving you medication and you don't work on, improving the oil, making sure everything is working smoothly and nicely. It just doesn't work with the human body. We can't just keep on repairing fast and then you go back. Let's start our treatment from now.
That's true.
Hippocrates, he said the food is your medicine and the medicine is your food. So if you do take care of yourself, you eat the right food, you will pay a very good price at the end. You will be benefiting from that. But if you don't, there will be obstacles, there will be ups and downs, and you might have to visit the pit stop, the hospital more frequently.
And talking about, when you mentioned about how one of the things that I would say that we here in Guam needs to recognize is that we need to develop a new generation that are healthier. Yeah, as I mentioned, you probably mentioned earlier that I've been here for a long time before, and I have seen, and many of us in the medical field have actually seen how one generation, the older generation, in which they were eating the more natural kinds of foods compared to the Western kinds of foods, were living longer and without much of the chronic diseases. And then came, the Western type of food and lifestyle. And what we find is that then this generation has been developing, the chronic diseases that we see now. One of the things that sad to know is that when I first I came here back in 1987. There was hardly, a dialysis center.
Centers,
Right.
yeah.
Now we have a lot of dialysis centers, and that's so. I think if we could look at it starting now, our young generation, our kids, and I'm talking to parents right now. If you want your kids to be the new generation in which they would be living healthier, it has to start right now. And it starts with us as parents.
It starts with every meal.
It starts with every meal. It starts with, what kind of nutrition are we, giving our kids or giving ourselves first, What are we taking home and putting in our refrigerator? And if those things that we are eating ourselves are what our kids are going to eat, then what we'll see 10 years from now, 15 years from now would be, a generation which would be similar to what we're suffering right now.
Right. We are discovering that even obesity is maybe most likely more of a infectious disease than not, because we share the same microbiome. And so if the microbiome is in the whole household, and imagine even the whole neighborhood can share some microbiome, and the whole island can share. And so if we're more unhealthy, we just all become a little bit unhealthy in general. The whole environment changes for us. So we're finding more and more how infectious actually obesity can be, and that you have to put extra effort living on an island where that's more prevalent to really stay healthy. It becomes difficult. We share the same microbiome even with the pets we have at home. For some reason, not as much with the cats, but we can share it with the dogs. And you can see in a household when, more junk food is prevalent, you can see that even in the dogs, right? It is, and this is all because of the microbiome that we all share together. So it is important kind of to mingle with people that are healthier. It is for your own benefit.
That's right. That's true. And going back again to the kids, what do they eat in school too? What kind of diet are they being fed?
I'll interrupt you. We were eating this, on Saturday, we were eating food, and all the adults were taking a little bit more vegetables. And you see, we left the kids with all the chips and all the junk food and all the sodas that they like, because this is what they like. And I realized, wow, are we really raising a healthy generation?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And we need to look at it initially from us individually, right? And then we look at it from a family standpoint. But then we could also look at it from a society standpoint. What is our society, or what is our island looking at? Are we promoting foods that are healthier? And are we discouraging foods that, tend to, be unhealthy?
Yeah, sometimes by not saying something, we are letting, our kids to choose those unhealthy foods, and then, we're just not setting them on the right path. We don't want our kids to struggle, right? Just by giving them like a temporary something that they like does not necessarily mean it's good for them in the long term. And we are creatures of habit. Once you start with the wrong foods, it's just so difficult to get rid of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned about obesity, which is a big challenge. I know it's a big challenge here in the island here, where I practice in California too. It's a very big challenge, and that's, people are then moving towards injections to be able to lose weight, surgeries and things like that.
But we can work on our
we could
microbiome.
We could
Yes.
work on the microbiome, and we could work on it as a child. I mean, think of it, if your child is eating the right kinds of food, they're less likely to develop obesity as they grow older. And you mentioned we're creatures of habit, and if our habit is to drink a soda every time of a meal, then that's not right.
Right. So there is another concept I would like to mention today. It's about the enzyme factor. So there's so much research lately done on the topic, and we have different opinions. We have different tendencies in understanding that. But the microbiome actually produces enzymes, different substrates that can help us speed up some processes. They will take place even without the enzymes, but with the enzymes will happen faster. For example, if you drink alcohol, the body does not like that, it's trying to eliminate it, and so the microbiome will start producing more enzymes that are gonna go and dissolve the alcohol, but more energy will be spent there. And so there are theories by very famous gastroenterologists, and one of them is Shinya. Hiromi Shinya. He's a Japanese doctor that when he went to the States, he was surprised how sick Americans are. And he got a job in one of the top hospitals, and he was the first one that he used a colonoscopy. He was the first one that used colonoscopy, and he actually, not the first one using colonoscopy, the first one that removed a polyp. And he realized that, actually, this is a non-invasive procedure and it can be done. He had seen the guts of, he said, more than 300,000 people. And he started making an observation that we have to take care of our enzymes. We're taking care of our microbiome, but the enzymes, he believes, are coming in one concrete, determined portion and number. And once we eliminate them, it is very difficult for us to stay healthy. But I will just share a little bit more about it right after the break.
Life 101. The basic rules for getting by and moving ahead in life.
Peace of mind is something that everyone wants, but it's harder to come by than ever these days. If you don't have peace of mind, there's no mystery to it. Here are some of the saboteurs at the top of the list. Financial stress can ruin peace of mind. It means we're spending more than we have coming in, or we are borrowing to buy instead of saving to buy things. Tweak your philosophy. Buy from your savings instead of on credit. You'll be amazed at the sweet peace of mind and less stress you'll have. Number 2, procrastination is a big peace of mind killer. Whether it's work, school, chores, or taking on a big project, procrastination simply robs us of peace of mind. Another area is struggles with personal relationships. If you are trying to fix other people in your life, you'll feel defeated. So make sure that each day you're bettering yourself to help those around you. Amazingly, you'll notice a change in your attitude toward them, and they will actually start acting differently toward you. Jesus said, "My peace I give to you." So it's there. We just need to discipline ourselves to keep that peace in our lives.
From Joy FM.
And we're back with more Total Health. Give us a call with your medical questions. Number to call in Guam is 472-1111. If you're in the CNMI, the number to call is 323-1113. Or you can text or WhatsApp us at 686-9999. Now back to the program.
Well, this is our last session, so I would like to just give as much information as I could possibly pack in here because it is very important, and I don't know when Dr. Geslani is going to come so we can do a part 3 of this topic. So we were talking about the enzymes. We have close to 5,000 different enzymes in our organism, and they're needed. They're very needed because they can speed up some process. They can speed up like a immune response when we have bacteria or viruses or fungal infections, and they can do much more for us. Sometimes we also have other enzymes that can block or inhibit our enzymes. Why is that needed? Because if our enzymes keep on going, they can even, for some reason go against our DNA. So our body God has created us in such a unique way that we can fight inflammation and we can block cancerous cells before they really form and start multiplying fast. And at the same time, we can give them rest. So the microbiome is responsible for those enzymes. And if the theories of those gastroenterologists are that once you're born with a certain number of enzymes, then we really need to take care of them. They're finding out that actually you can bring more enzymes on board if you eat fruits and vegetables, because fruits and vegetables, they come with the enzymes needed to be taken care of. So why it's so important that when we eat, we will have time to chew our food, because this is when the time the enzymes of amylase comes and can break all the, carbs, can break the starch down. Then when it gets to the stomach, can break the proteins. Proteins are very important to be broken down so we can really benefit from it. But when we eat too much of amino acids, then actually changes the pH, and those enzymes could not work properly. If they work properly, even if you have bacteria like H. pylori, it can be eliminated, and the stomach, if the acidity is correct and it's very low in the stomach, can kill that. But if we do not take care of the enzymes of our microbiome, we can develop that infection. Once we develop the infection, then we know we can have an ulcer, then we can get a cancer. We also get those gastric acids that if we don't treat, they can really bring all types of problems with them. So taking care of our enzymes is very, very important. So the gastroenterologists are coming to the same conclusion that New Start is the way to go.
That's right. And I think, dovetailing on the enzymes, enzymes are part also of the what the body uses for immunity, fighting, as you mentioned, certain infections that we have. And, there are enzymes in our tears, there are enzymes in our sweat glands, there are enzymes in our, in our stomach that comes through. And so all of this are, as you mentioned, in relation to what's going on with the microbiome. And our microbiome, again, is not just in the gut, but that's where the majority of the things are. But we have microbiomes in our skin, we have microbiomes in our lungs, and our throat, in our mouth. As you mentioned, chewing, enzymes. And so towards the last part of our section here, we're going to talk about how the microbiome affects our immunity. And immunity has two parts. We have the innate immunity and we have the adaptive immunity. And so as we grow older, our immunity sometimes gets affected. There are certain things that we probably don't have as strong as immunity as if you're young. There's
because we're
also
kind of emptying this reservoir of enzymes.
And also environment. It talks about environment, in regards to what we are being exposed. Unfortunately, some people create a bad environment by smoking, right? Or by drinking.
Emotional stress also.
Or emotional stress. Those are environmental things that affect also our immunity, right? And then what they're finding also, obesity by itself, does affect our immunity, which, again, we talked earlier, gets translated from what we have. And then also a poor diet, that they're also saying that affects it. And then you mentioned about stress and lack of sleep and rest. Those things actually do affect our immunity. And in that regard, there's a relationship also with the microbiome.
So also it is found that for the enzymes, in order for them to stay active and for as long as possible, because they can be involved in different reactions in the body, we need to bring them the microelements. So, they can produce even the cofactors and the vitamins, and all those good microelements like zinc, like magnesium, are very important for our health. We actually got a question asking if we can reverse diabetes type 2, and what can we do to eat foods that can decrease the A1C. And we are actually gonna answer now, in a long way, but actually, yes, the answer is yes, we can do that. The microbiome can be restored, the enzymes can be restored, and people that have diabetes really need to work on their microbiome, and we are finding more and more about it. So if we eat foods that are rich in plants, like all type of plants, we don't have to even think when you eat fresh fruits and vegetables how the enzymes are going to work out and the microbiome is going. The body is taking what it is needed, and they come already with enzymes that can be assimilated and they can be taken directly into the bloodstream. When we take medication, it's a little bit different because you're giving the direct component or even vitamins, and the body needs to produce cofactors in order to simulate and take care of those medications. So yes, we can take care of our body by just introducing the good foods. And we have been telling the whole time, good foods, good foods, good foods. Dr. Geslani, please help us. What are those foods that can help our,
going back, actually, one of the doctors that used to be here, Dr. Youngberg, wrote a book about diabetes being reversed. And so, yes, diabetes could be reversed by diet. And what they're finding out is that by moving away from processed foods and eating more whole grain foods, even when you've heard about plant-based diet, that's fine. But if you use a lot of processed, plant-based things, it's not really as healthy as if you eat, the whole grain. Now, there are two things that come up when going back to reversing diabetes: diet, lifestyle, and exercise. If one does this two, eating the healthy diet and having an exercise program, the likelihood that one could reverse or actually decrease, whatever medications they're on is much higher.
Right. So we're going back to, as God has created us, because our body has an immense way of recovering on its own. God has put everything that it is needed there, should we consider that. And so as I was going about the food, it is important to continue eating foods in microelements. Foods. Also, some mushrooms have been found to be very helpful with that. Nuts are extremely helpful in improving our microbiome. Also, seaweeds really have been found to be very, very helpful. And I actually even have a list with every type of seaweed that you can eat, how that can benefit your microbiome. And having all those and even very good prebiotic foods that can turn into probiotics can significantly help you. We actually do not need to have medications, in a long term. If we take care of our microbiome, it will itself take care of itself.
That's true. And one other thing they called garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, artichokes, dandelion greens, bananas, seaweeds, you mentioned it, fruits, beans, whole grains are prebiotics.
Yes, taro leaves are also good. We have breadfruit, that it is amazing. We have molungai or moringa.
Moringa.
That is also very, very good. We actually have everything in Guam to stay healthy. The coconut has so many enzymes in itself. The green one is good, but the orange one is even better, the king coconut. That can even treat urinary infections, upper respiratory infections, asthma. If we go back to the basics, we will certainly enjoy better health.
When I initially came here, back in the 80s, they were mentioning that no one had diabetes before
Oh.
World War II.
Wow.
The term diabetes was foreign to the island.
Wow.
Before World War II. It was just right after World War II when all of the Western type foods, processed foods and all the things, the canned foods, that processed meat that came through. That then this whole idea, this whole thing about diabetes came into the picture. And
I think we're very responsible that we brought the Western food into the islands. The islands were so much healthier before that, and they had actually everything. And now we are benefiting, knowing how bad the Western diet is. We're actually benefiting from all the tomorrow foods that you can find in abundance on the island, but for some reason, we have started ignoring them, preferably to other easy, accessible foods.
That's true.
Right, like ready meats, like ready fish, already manufactured pizzas, macaroni, spam, and all those foods that are not helping our microbiome, not helping our health.
That's true. The bottom line is by taking care of our microbiome, which in sense taking care of what we eat, what we put in our bodies, would keep us, healthier and prevent, chronic diseases. I like to end with a verse, and it's a verse from Psalms 103, 2 and 3. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases. I think the Lord is one that is willing for us to be healed from all our diseases.
Amen.
Be sure to check with your doctors before making any sudden life changes discussed today. Total Health is brought to you in partnership with Guam Seventh-day Adventist Clinic, where health is their mission. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Thank you and si Juas Masi for listening.